What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my first impressions of Remnant from the Ashes, an interesting action-adventure with some Souls-like elements that initially released all the way back in 2019. However, the sequel for this game is dropping just here in a few weeks. So before that happens, because it's a game I would like to cover, I would like to quickly run through the original title for the first time and get a feel for it, do a review which is a bit off schedule, so I have the frame of reference for the review for the second game. But right away, Remnant is an interesting game. It's the first time I've played it. Like I said, it released back in 2019, and this was back when I actually still had my old salaried job, as opposed to reviewing games for a living. So it kind of just slipped by me. But first impressions wise, I had heard this game referred to as Dark Souls but with guns. And while having played it now, I can see what people are trying to say with that statement. I would at the same time tell you that the combat doesn't really feel Souls-like at all. At least so far, it's really just more of an action adventure, with the bigger emphasis being on shooting. The Souls-like parts of the game is really more in its gameplay elements in terms of the level design and things like that. There are checkpoints, you rest at them, it respawns all the minor enemies. There's shortcuts, things like that. And so while there are very bare bones elements of a Souls-like system here, I personally would consider this more of an action-adventure shooting game. But Remnant, as the name might imply, puts you in the shoes of the remnants of humanity. Some sort of ancient evil has crossed through and destroyed most of the bulk of civilization, with the remnants trying their best to survive, while at the same time trying to uncover what this evil is, which is referred to as the Root, as many of the enemies have a sort of tree-like appearance to them. One of the first things I learned in this game, though, is that even the trees themselves are dangerous, as going near them would actually bug me out and prevent my character from moving and force me to respawn at a checkpoint, which happened literally every time I walked near a tree in the starting area, which was kind of funny, given the nature of the enemies themselves. That said, we play as our own generated character, so there is a small bit of cosmetic character customization, followed by a quick tutorial to get you up to speed with the game's systems, which lets you pick out an archetype to sort of begin your adventure with, which will set up your starting equipment and stats a little bit. However, what's interesting about this game is the way it handles some of its progression systems. Rather than you leveling up and increasing stats in some way, you instead have traits. You only have a few of these to start with, but you can unlock more by completing objectives or defeating certain bosses, is my understanding. And every time you level up, you actually get a trait point that you can then increase one of these traits with, which is similar to leveling up a stat, but is honestly a little more interesting. Because in Souls-likes especially, there tends to be so much diminishing return on everything to do with a stat after a certain point besides its weapon scaling. So here they've kind of removed that, moved it to these traits, and then things like more damage and whatnot comes from upgrading your weapons. You'll be finding crafting materials as you move through environments and defeat enemies, which can then be used to improve your weapons and everything by taking them back to a vendor in the hub area. With the bulk of your build coming down to the traits you have and are using to level up, it's my understanding you can eventually get to a point where they're all maxed out though, with the rest of your build coming down to the equipment you have, which can have its own modifiers and effects that can give you all sorts of ways to approach the otherwise shooting-based combat, though there is a bit of melee as well. And overall, that's an interesting system. As I move through this one, I'm excited to see how much diversity in the builds there is there, because it seems like a system with a lot of potential. Now, when it comes to actually playing the game, this seems to be an almost mission-based structure, best I can tell, where we activate these stones of some kind that then allow us to teleport to other parts of Earth or different dimensions to track down our objectives. And we can do this by tracking down the campaign objectives or just going into adventure mode, which will let you just sort of roll an area you've been to and give you an almost dungeon-esque situation to go through and explore, which was kind of cool. And it's my understanding you can re-roll through these, including the campaign, to go back and do things you've missed, which can all be done in co-op as as this game supports playing with up to 2 other players, which is a nice touch as well. Now, one thing that does worry me a little bit is the boss fights. It seems like because the focus tends to be on the shooting that the bosses seem to just summon in swarms of enemies while you're trying to fight the boss, and a lot of the difficulty seems to be with that. So as I move to review this title, the things I'll be keeping an eye on are how much build diversity there actually is. That seems like something that could be a ton of fun. And then what the level design and boss fights look like, as this game seems to blend almost dungeon crawler elements with shooting elements. So how well it handles those things are going to be of great interest to me. But that said, so far here in the early days, it is a fairly positive experience. I would say so far I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm really enjoying the aesthetic of all the enemies, and the combat so far has been pretty good as well. That said, in terms of a timeline, most of the quick research I've done on this game shows me that 100% should take around 60-ish hours, so depending on how long that actually winds up taking me, I'll probably have it done by this weekend, but there are a few particularly grindy achievements that I saw which may or may not take me longer, so we shall see. But that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed these first impressions. If you're looking forward to the review of this game before its sequel's launch date, do remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.